Hey everyone, Margarita here. This is episode number 20 on my severe carbon monoxide poisoning. And this episode is going to be about the signs and symptoms within a baby who is exposed in utero or being exposed after birth and being, just a small baby or a toddler or a child, even just small children in general. So it depends at what point the exposure begins based on like what type of symptoms they experience. Because like I said before, no two poisonings are alike. No one's ever going to take in the exact amount of carbon monoxide as another. Everyone's body processes it at a different rate. But the smaller you are, the quicker it takes over versus a larger person or someone with more hemoglobin. So, mind you, I was 30 weeks pregnant when I began working at this restaurant, and the name of the restaurant is Little Daddy's. It was located in Taylor, Michigan. It is no longer there. They knocked it down last year, and they put a Chick-fil-A there. And I do believe that's because the case finally started going to court, and they wanted to make sure that any evidence that may have been left was no longer there, because the evidence was their ventilation system. And then I know they replaced it shortly after I removed myself from there. So the proof is in the pudding. And there was some corruption with the building inspector in that city at that time. I do not know if it's actually related to my situation or not, but it very well could be. I stayed so messed up for so long, I don't even know. I've never even looked into the situation since that time. That was quite a while ago. Now, I initially said I wasn't going to speak. I said this to the workers' comp court, but they keep pushing my court date further and further out, and I didn't even get a court date till 2024, and the injury became known in 2018. So, they're playing games with me, and it's all or nothing at this point, and I have no attorney representing me, and no attorney will touch it with a 10-foot pole. So I'm basically going to put on a trial myself. And I did do all the proper paperwork, and it took me months, but there's hundreds and hundreds of pages, and it had to go to 7 or 8 agencies. So I did all that. It took me a very long time because of the amount of treatments we've been through, how severely injured we are, how injured my brain is, and then I'm expected to do all this stuff that makes everything really hard to do. And then, I live with continuous symptoms from the day of the injury. It's never gone away. It doesn't go away. Yeah, I get some pills to kind of help with the fluctuating symptoms and the pain and the suffering and there's sometimes none of that even works. There's nothing you can do about it but be laid out. So I do spend a significant amount of my time laid out, especially because I'm not at least doing maintenance treatments or treating at all right now. So that makes it a lot harder to do things. But when I'm treating regularly, there's more of a normal flow to my life. And, because this is, my son's almost 9 years old. This is a lot of years, and 7 years from the day the injury became known. And so I've also had a lot of time to watch these symptoms play out within him. Once it all became known, so it's years had gone by for me to get these answers as well. So I did promise not to say anything about the name in court the last time I was in court, but they are playing games. They have no intention on paying me. They do owe me over $1 million at this point. I don't know if I'm actually ever going to receive it. It's all or nothing, basically. And if I can procedurally put on the trial correct, I may receive it. But if not, then I think he's just waiting for me to do one wrong thing procedurally wrong so he can throw the case out, is basically what I got out of him while I was down there talking last time. So I swore I would not say the name of the restaurant publicly, but due to what they're doing, their actions, the games they're playing, they keep changing the court date. It should have already happened last week. And so now I'm just going to come out and say the name of the restaurant and tell the world everything this place has done to me and how it's destroyed my life, my children, everything, because I stayed incapacitated for such a long period of time. Those other kids, they're not all adults. I lost years, and my life is permanently changed. I can't get that time back. Not to mention I was never paid anything, not lost wages, I paid all my way out of this with my own pocket with no money from them toward medical or anything. So, there's a very big problem here. The restaurant's name's Little Daddy's. I know they still have 2 out there somewhere in the greater Detroit area. I think one's Bloomfield Hills or Southfield maybe, or Rochester Hills maybe. I'm not really sure. Somewhere out there, there's 2 other Little Daddy's restaurants. The owner of these restaurants, his name is Leonard Colton. And he's a big fat fuck who's greedy and doesn't care about his employees. And I know they had some hourly wage scam for their hourly employees. They weren't paying them all correctly. I think that happened numerous times in the past. You know, they don't really fix things properly, so things aren't really safe. It's not really safe for their employees to work there. It's a pretty shady, you know, he's a shady business owner owning some shady restaurants, and it's cost me my life and my future and everything that I built prior, with no help from anyone, and repeatedly getting wiped out by my deranged mother. I had built my life to that degree before this all happened to me, and due to that, I was able to pay my way out of this and keep us alive. If that had not all been the case, we would have died immediately. We would have made it past 2019. So I do want to just put it out there. I'm not keeping anything secret anymore. I'm done playing these people's games. I'm just going to go live with everything, go viral with everything, keep making videos, and I'm going to tell the world the truth, and then let the world be the judge of what they actually did. Because I'm sure those other employees, even though they didn't experience extreme symptoms like me, they were experiencing symptoms, and I guarantee to this day, most of those people, if not all of them, are probably experiencing some type of serious health problem from all that, because they were taking it in, whether they want to believe me or not. So, yeah, I just had to throw all that in there because some time has gone on. This is how it has played out, and that's also how I know about the symptoms, you know, going on that long for a child or one, you know, being exposed in utero. Maybe you're finding my video because you just got carbon monoxide poisoning in utero, or you had one large poisoning and you're pregnant, and now you're trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future. So, I mean, I did start getting exposed at 30 weeks pregnant, about 15 hours a week of an unknown amount, gave birth while suffering from it, and then returned to the place 7 months later. So when that child was born, and any little amounts of carbon monoxide that he was coming in contact with, normal amounts that are normal for regular people and okay for regular people, those amounts were affecting us, and we were unaware of it at the time. So, you know, I've watched all this play out to this degree. He was going downhill with me, and then, you know, shortly after I overloaded, I started seeing how his system was reacting long term, and he was slowly loading up with every little exposure, and he was also near death with me at the same time once we reached a certain point. So I have watched all this play out to have these answers and have the information that I have today, because he's in like a couple weeks here, he'll be 9. So now I want to start with when he was born. His head was very, very large, and it was due to that last 10 weeks of pregnancy, the way he was growing, being formed in utero with the carbon monoxide exposure. That is what causes that. That is what causes the cerebral-like symptoms in children exposed in utero to carbon monoxide, or if you were poisoned by carbon monoxide. That's what would cause all of that. And it is lack of the oxygen, lack of oxygen to the brain related. That's what I'm trying to say. That is what that is. Like, so a lot of these symptoms I'm talking about are directly related to that. Because you have to have a proper flow of oxygen to the brain, basically. And, okay, so initially, you know, when my son was born, he had some curved feet that were like extremely curved in, and no one ever really diagnosed this, but I guess you could say it was clubfoot. And because I always saw a chiropractor, and we always continued to see one, he saw a chiropractor long before I think he was over a year old, before I even realized what caused the problem, who did it, what all that was about. I had significantly fixed the problem myself with my actions and taking him to the chiropractor, rubbing his ankles, and taking his ankles once he got, you know, 7, 8, 9 months old, putting him in a bouncer and holding him to the floor so his feet would form properly and he could stand properly. That's what I was doing, and it worked. And we took turns holding his feet down, and it worked. So you would never know today, and we were not sure for quite some time if that was still it was gonna be it looked like it could be a very serious permanent problem, but the way I had went about it, while his ankles were forming and he was learning to walk, it actually cured it. Nobody would ever know. If I did not tell you everything I just said, nobody would ever know today that he has a problem with that. But I know there's an issue. His shoes, you know, his feet don't stand flat properly because of that, the way that is, and it does throw his back off and makes his back hurt once he stands for too long. So there is an issue, but like no one would ever know. And initially it looked like there was going to be a very severe problem where everybody would know. And that is not actually the case because of how I went about it. Now that can apply to any extremity. Like that could be the arms, that could be like anything really. And then he also had a curved penis. It was curved all the way left, or I guess that was his right. his right, my left. So it was curved all the way and stayed that way until he had enough hyperbaric oxygen treatment. What it was is there was a knot of carbon monoxide loaded in whichever part of the brain affects that organ, basically, and it was loaded up in a knot. And once he cleared enough of it, it went straight. Just so, I don't know how long into treatment. It was probably a year into treatment or so, at least, somewhere around there is when it started to fix itself. But all of a sudden, one day, you know, he cleared enough of it and it just went normal. So if you experience that in your baby after you've had a carbon monoxide exposure, you've been poisoned by carbon monoxide in utero, that is what is needed to fix that. That's the only way to fix that, and it will fix itself. You just have to have enough hyperbaric oxygen. Same with the choking problem. That was the other prevalent problem that I had with him. Right upon birth, he was choking significantly and frequently. It was a lot. And that is oxygen to the brain related as well, lack of oxygen to the brain. And that goes for any age people, especially old people. It starts happening again when you get old, because older people tend to start losing oxygen to their brain for numerous reasons as they get older, and it happens to them too. So that's what that is. And it's beyond me why nobody ever thought that this was alarming any of this time that I was in the hospital with him, or like when he was at a pediatrician when he was younger, because he has not needed to go to one since we started treatment at the center. There's no need for it because we treat at the center. I understand health on a different level due to my mother having Munchausen by proxy and no help from the medical system all of my life, all of my adult life. You know, I understand things differently. So he has a chiropractor. And that's all that's needed, because I understand. And then we treat at the center, and that's the issues. Any issues we're experiencing, it's due to our initial injury and the overload of carbon monoxide. So what we need is more hyperbaric oxygen treatment, and that's the cure. So ever since finding them, you know, a lot of these things are no longer issues, or they're controlled. As long as we can get treatment, the symptoms can get under control. And I do have some other homeopathic methods, which I'll talk about in a different video. And this goes for any age. I'm talking about these homeopathic methods, so I'll get into that later. But the choking problem, I think it's technically called dysphagia, something like that. It was a very serious problem. It's very scary when your baby is choking, your baby's choking repeatedly, your toddler's choking repeatedly. This went on for 3 years. 3 years? He was 3 when he started treatment. So after his very first treatment, that's when it stopped. That's when he finally got enough oxygen to the brain to make that symptom stop. So when that, you know, after he reached I believe it was like 1 month after he turned 3, not even. And all of a sudden the problem cleared right after the first treatment. And I couldn't have been more thankful day of my life other than Thanksgiving, when we crossed the first threshold of our injuries becoming not so extreme and there being a light at the end of the tunnel. Those were the 2 most thankful days I've ever had. And people don't understand, you know, people take breathing oxygen and getting enough oxygen to the brain for granted. People out here take that shit like for granted, literally. And when you can't have that and it's very extreme and you need oxygen, it changes your whole world, especially when you go that way for years, long-term stuff like that. And it's something so simple, and the system is built to not give it to you or designed to not find the problem. And so you actually don't get oxygen. You stay in a state of suffocation and you stay suffering, and to stay living that way for a very long time. You know, it changes. If you can somehow find your way out of that, which most people I would say probably cannot, because you'd have to have quite a bit of money, like cash money and or credit, you would have to get out of that situation with how the system is built. And, you know, I laid here for years on end begging for enough oxygen to the brain while my brain's burning, bleeding, sagging, swollen, throbbing. I stayed that way for 3 years. The baby stayed that way with me. That choking problem went along with that. You know, all these symptoms I'm going to talk about, they all went along with that. So as I'm talking about these symptoms, they start to clear as we're treating. But he did not begin treatment until age 3 when he had his first treatment. And then he didn't start treating 4 days a week until, I believe it was 4 months later when it became 4 days a week. Because I had to get ahead of him. When we started, I had to start first, because it's kind of like putting, when they tell you in the airplane, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping the child. That is exactly how that goes in real life. You're of no use to anybody if you can't keep yourself alive, and it's that extreme. something like that, and it is a medical emergency. That's why it's called a medical emergency. And to have no help and no oxygen, you have to get yourself situated in order to help them, because especially if you're self-paying, how are you going to get the money if you can't do anything? So I did have to get myself ahead of him a few months, and I was still extremely fragile for all that time, several years. And it's still the case today. I'm just not as fragile as I once was. I was like so fragile I couldn't have one wrong breath any which way, and it was that way for a long time. So like I've seen a lot, I went through a lot. I'm very thankful to have oxygen to the brain and not have a baby with no choking problem anymore, because that is very serious. It's very alarming. It disrupts your life. You can't go to work. You can't be gone long periods of time. You can't leave them with the babysitter. You can't feed them normal food. Other people don't comprehend that. So he's pretty much been with me his entire life. And like I said, we still have periods of we have to shelter in place and be homebound for a while due to large spills and such that are out there. That is what is going on in the current. So I'm going to talk about that in some different videos, because it keeps happening here where I live in Flat Rock, Michigan. I'll get to that. But, these problems from carbon monoxide, even if you're having problems that I'm not mentioning, they are all reversible with hyperbaric oxygen. I don't care what you read. I don't care what anyone says. That's the answer. Keep doing it. There are a couple of, I believe one was a dentist. She retired. She was a holistic dentist. She had stage 4 cancer. She was treating at the same facility as me. And I saw a homeopathic, I think he did Reiki and acupuncture and something else. He was some type of homeopathic Indian doctor. And the two of them were the only two brightest individuals that I met, and Dr. Bogner. He was the doctor at the facility where we are still treating, but he does not work there anymore. He's been gone for a few years. So those three are the only ones who had any intelligence whatsoever that I've met anywhere in this entire injury. And the holistic dentist, she was going through the same treatment, so she knew. She did that and many other things just like me, and I told her everything. She was the only one of any help to me, and I crossed paths with her fairly early on in my injury, fairly early on into treating, when I really did not know if there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. But she did say, just keep treating, just keep going, just keep going. Same with the homeopathic doctor. And the doctor at the center wasn't really my doctor, but in a sense, he oversaw everything there. So I did talk to him a couple of times. Those were the only ones that ever had any common sense or any medical knowledge whatsoever properly towards carbon monoxide poisoning, the hyperbaric oxygen treatments, and what we were going through. So, I've been in the driver's seat the entire time of everything we've gone through and gotten us to where we are today. I just had the medical professionals that are involved, the mental health professionals, and anybody involved. I'm the one actually running everything, and I had to get people, because I understood it the entire time. I had to get people on my team to understand, because I understood everything. I understood the problem. I understood what happened. Maybe I couldn't put it into words, but I knew what happened. I knew how to reverse it. I just had to figure out how we're going to make that happen, because the system is not built to allow that to happen at all. So I'm the one who figured it all out on my own, and the people that are involved today are the people who basically support my decisions and back me on what I'm saying is going on, and medically on paper have my back supportively. That's how I had to go about things. That's how we are still alive. That and the self-pay at the private center. So that is the main key. And depending on where you live, because even if you don't live in America, I'm not sure how the hyperbaric oxygen chambers work outside of America, but I'm pretty sure there's only a couple hundred of them here in the United States. So it depends on the state you live in. You could be living really far from one. I do know the center I treat at gets patients from out of state all the time. They come and stay in a hotel, and they do sets of them for a few months, and they go back home. So that may be something you may have to do if you're further out. I just want to give all this additional information, because I'm going to do a whole bunch of episodes separately on hyperbaric oxygen treatment. I just want to let you know that all of these symptoms will be reversible, but this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to figure out how to go about getting the treatment. Now, okay, so I actually already, took up a whole video just doing those couple symptoms and explaining all that, but it is kind of like some base information. There's a lot of information in my videos overall, and that's why it's being broken down into so many subjects, so many videos. There is so much. And to get a regular person to understand everything to the degree that I understand things and what has gone on, it's going to take many, many videos, and that's why I have to break it down so small. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that video right there, because it's at about 20 minutes. I really wanted to keep them at about 15. But I'm gonna get back into the rest of these symptoms in the next video, and I'll keep it going. And then what I'll do is I'll do some videos after I finish telling the signs and symptoms of this, and I'll do a more in-depth view of the very severe symptoms and the ongoing symptoms day in and day out for years on end. So I'll get into that, and I'll label it something different. That way people who want more in-depth information and what was actually going on during all this can view those videos afterwards. But basically I want to get the signs, symptoms, and the base story out first. So what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll talk about the rest of the symptoms in the next episode. Thanks, bye.